There are at least 7 ways you can accidentally commit a felony in Arizona just by carrying your firearm to the wrong place at the wrong time, and most people who break these laws had absolutely no idea they were doing anything wrong. Arizona sits near the top of every list when it comes to gun-friendly states, and that reputation gives people a dangerous sense of comfort. They assume that because the state respects their rights so broadly, the rules barely exist. That assumption is exactly where the trouble starts. By the time we finish walking through everything today, you will know precisely where every legal boundary sits, from how you carry to where you carry to who can and cannot touch a firearm under Arizona law. Some of what we cover is going to surprise even people who have been carrying in this state for years. Let us start with the baseline because everything else builds on top of it. Arizona operates under what is commonly called constitutional carry. That means if you are 21 years of age or older and you are legally permitted to possess a handgun, the state generally allows you to carry that handgun either openly or concealed without obtaining any kind of permit first. No application, no class, no fee required just to exercise the right. That is a significant level of freedom, and it is one of the reasons Arizona attracts so many gun owners from other parts of the country. Now, even though the state does not require a permit, Arizona still issues concealed carry permits, and there are very good reasons to get one. The permit unlocks reciprocity with other states, it provides an exemption to certain federal restrictions we will cover shortly, and it grants access to carry in some locations that would otherwise be off limits. So while the permit is technically optional for basic carry within the state, treating it as unnecessary is a mistake many people regret later. If you fall into the 18 to 20 age range, the rules shift in an important way. You can still open carry a handgun in Arizona, but you cannot access that concealed carry lane yet under most circumstances. There are narrow exceptions carved out for active duty military members who can qualify for a concealed carry permit as young as 19. But for the general population, concealed carry of a handgun without a permit is a privilege that kicks in at 21, not 18. One thing worth emphasizing here is that these age rules specifically govern carrying, not necessarily owning or purchasing firearms. Those purchase rules live in their own section and follow a different structure, so keep that distinction in mind as we move forward. As for rifles and shotguns, Arizona keeps things straightforward. The state generally allows possession of long guns without imposing the kinds of restrictions you see in states like California or New York. There is no so-called assault weapon ban. There are no magazine capacity limits. If it is legal under federal law, Arizona generally does not add extra layers on top when it comes to long gun ownership. But here is where the freedom starts to develop edges, because carry rights do not follow you everywhere, and the fastest way people accidentally cross a legal line in Arizona is not through what they carry, but through where they carry it. Even in a state that embraces permitless carry as enthusiastically as Arizona does, there are locations where bringing a firearm will land you in serious legal jeopardy. Some of these are obvious, and some of them catch people completely off guard. Federal buildings top the list. Post offices, federal courthouses, and any building owned or operated by the federal government are absolute no-go zones. It does not matter what Arizona state law says about your right to carry. Federal property operates under federal jurisdiction, and federal law prohibits firearms in those spaces. This trips people up more often than you would expect, especially at post offices where someone might walk in to grab a package without even thinking about the handgun on their hip. State and local government buildings also carry restrictions, particularly when security screening measures and firearm storage are in place. Courthouses and courtrooms are restricted. Polling places during elections are off limits. Detention facilities and correctional institutions are obviously prohibited, and certain critical infrastructure sites, including nuclear generating stations and specific hydroelectric facilities, are locked down as well. Schools represent one of the most commonly misunderstood areas of Arizona gun law. Carrying a firearm on K through 12 school grounds is generally restricted, and violating this can result in serious charges. However, there is a narrow vehicle exception that matters to a lot of parents. If you are dropping off or picking up a child and the firearm stays inside the vehicle, it must be unloaded. It must remain under the control of an adult, and if anyone exits the vehicle, the gun cannot be visible and the vehicle must be locked. That is how many parents legally handle the school run while still keeping their firearm with them. The gun never leaves the car and the car stays secured. Colleges and universities operate under a different framework. Rather than falling under the same statewide criminal statutes that govern K through 12 campuses, higher education institutions typically regulate firearms through their own campus policies. The legal landscape on college campuses can vary from school to school, so if you spend any time on a university campus, checking their specific policies is essential. Now let us talk about what might be the single biggest trap in all of Arizona gun law, and that is alcohol. When you step onto the licensed premises of a bar or a restaurant that serves alcohol for on-site consumption, carrying a firearm is generally illegal unless two conditions are both met. First, you must hold a valid Arizona concealed carry permit. Second, the establishment must not have posted the specific sign required under state statute. If that sign is posted, you are done. Staff does not have to approach you and ask you to leave. They do not have to give you a verbal warning. The posted sign alone is legally sufficient. Walking past it with a firearm is a violation, and claiming you did not see it is not a defense that holds up well. Airports introduce yet another layer. The actual restriction activates at the security checkpoint and within the secure area beyond it. Firearms absolutely cannot pass through TSA screening. If you are flying with a firearm, federal regulations require it to be unloaded, secured inside a hard-sided locked case, and checked with the airline at the ticket counter. But the non-secure public areas of the airport, the curbside zones, the parking structures, and the ticketing lobbies before security, those generally fall under standard Arizona carry rules. Private property is where enforcement takes a slightly different form. Business owners and homeowners in Arizona have the right to prohibit firearms on their property. Outside of the specific liquor establishment sign rule, most no firearms signs at private businesses are enforced through trespass law rather than a standalone firearms charge. What that means practically is that the sign alone might not create a criminal violation, but if the property owner or their representative asks you to leave and you refuse, that refusal becomes a trespassing charge. The smart approach is simple. Respect the property owner's wishes or take your business elsewhere. And there is one more location category that catches people by surprise, and that is tribal land. Tribal nations within Arizona are sovereign governments. Arizona's state carry laws do not automatically extend onto tribal territory. Many tribes restrict or outright prohibit firearms without specific authorization. Crossing from state land onto a reservation without understanding the tribal rules can create problems that Arizona carry rights cannot protect you from. Arizona's vehicle rules are among the most permissive in the country, but there are still details that matter, especially when federal law overlaps with state law. The Federal Gun-Free School Zones Act creates a 1,000-foot buffer zone around every K through 12 school in the country. Within that zone, possessing a firearm can become a federal issue. Arizona concealed carry permit holders are exempt from this restriction. Without a permit, the firearm generally must be unloaded and locked inside a container to avoid a potential violation. This is one of the strongest practical arguments for obtaining an Arizona concealed carry permit, even though the state does not require one for basic carry. That federal school zone exemption alone makes the permit worth having. Outside of those school zones, Arizona law is remarkably flexible for vehicle carry. If you are 21 or older, you can keep a handgun essentially anywhere in the vehicle. Concealed, visible, loaded, unloaded, in the glove box, in the center console, in a holster mounted to the dash. The state does not require separation of the firearm from ammunition, does not mandate a locked container, and does not restrict placement. If you are legally allowed to possess the firearm, Arizona generally lets you keep it wherever works for you in the vehicle. For those under 21, the handgun cannot simply be stuffed loose and hidden somewhere in the vehicle. It must either be plainly visible or stored inside a case, holster, pack, piece of luggage, or a defined storage compartment like a glove box or center console. During traffic stops, Arizona does not impose a duty to inform. You are not legally required to volunteer to the officer that you have a firearm in the vehicle or on your person. However, if the officer asks directly, honesty is both the legal requirement and the smart move. Officers may temporarily take custody of a firearm for the duration of the contact for safety purposes, and cooperating calmly through that process is always the right call. This is the section that matters more than any other, because if you fall into one of these categories, everything else we have discussed is irrelevant. The carry rules, the vehicle rules, the location restrictions, none of it applies to you because you are not legally allowed to touch a firearm in the first place. Arizona and federal law both establish categories of people who are prohibited from possessing firearms. The most commonly known category is anyone with a felony conviction whose rights have not been formally restored. But the list extends much further than that. It includes individuals convicted of domestic violence offenses, and that includes certain misdemeanor domestic violence convictions, not just felonies. It includes people subject to certain protective orders or court orders. It includes fugitives from justice, unlawful users of controlled substances, individuals who have been involuntarily committed for mental health treatment or adjudicated as mentally defective, anyone who has received a dishonorable discharge from the military, and individuals who are in the country unlawfully. And here's the category that quietly catches more people than almost any other. Certain juvenile felony adjudications can still block firearm possession years, even decades, into adulthood. Many people miss this entirely because the common assumption is that juvenile records disappear once you turn 18. In many cases, the record itself may be sealed, but the legal disability it created does not automatically vanish. And because Arizona embraces permitless carry, there is no application process that would flag this issue. People simply assume that reaching the legal age means they are clear, and that assumption can be dangerously wrong. If you have any doubt whatsoever about your eligibility, getting a definitive legal answer before you ever handle a firearm is not just advisable, it is the only responsible path forward. And for anyone who discovers they are currently prohibited, the focus should shift to understanding whether and how their rights can be restored. For those who are legally eligible, purchasing a firearm in Arizona is a relatively streamlined process. Dealer sales run through the federal background check system. In some cases, presenting a valid Arizona concealed carry permit can serve as an alternative to the standard background check, though individual dealers retain the discretion to run the check regardless. Federal law sets the age thresholds for dealer purchases. You must be 18 to buy a rifle or shotgun from a licensed dealer and 21 to buy a handgun from a licensed dealer. The background check returns one of three results: proceed, delay, or deny. If the result is a delay, federal law allows the dealer to complete the transfer after 3 business days pass without a denial being issued. For buyers under 21, that waiting window can extend up to 10 business days. Once the check comes back clear, there is no state-mandated waiting period. You can complete the purchase and walk out the door with the firearm the same day. Private sales between individuals in Arizona do not require a background check, a permit, or any form of registration. The seller cannot knowingly transfer a firearm to someone who is prohibited from possessing one, and that responsibility falls squarely on the seller. Many private sellers choose to verify the buyer's identification and create a simple bill of sale documenting the transaction. None of that is legally required, but it is strongly recommended. That documentation establishes a clear record that the firearm left your possession on a specific date to a specific individual, which can matter enormously if that firearm ever surfaces in a criminal investigation. Since Arizona does not maintain a firearm registration system that tracks ownership, that personal record may be the only evidence that the gun is no longer yours. One area where federal law comes down with full force is the straw purchase. Buying a firearm on behalf of someone who is prohibited from possessing one is a federal felony, and it is prosecuted aggressively. The person filling out the federal form is asked directly whether they are the actual buyer of the firearm. Answering dishonestly on that form is itself a separate federal crime. This is not an area where good intentions or family loyalty provide any kind of legal shelter. Arizona gives its residents an extraordinary amount of freedom when it comes to firearms, and that freedom comes with a responsibility to understand exactly where the boundaries are. The laws are generally straightforward, but the details matter, and the overlap between state law, federal law, and sovereign tribal jurisdiction creates layers that casual assumptions cannot safely navigate. Whether you carry every day or you are just getting started, knowing these rules is not optional. It is the foundation that everything else rests on. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.